Hi guys, Mimi G here of MimiGstyle.com, and today we're going to be doing a sew along of one of my new pre-spring simplicity patterns, 8558. Now let's start by sewing View D, the jacket. Now if you're new to sewing or you just need a refresher course, make sure and visit the Sewing Basics video linked in the description box below. Watch that video, then come back and sew along with me. Alright guys, we're going to work on our jacket View D for 8558. In the back of the pattern envelope, you're given some fabric suggestions along with notions. You're going to need 3 1-inch buttons to make View D our jacket. Let's go over the pieces you're going to need. You will need to cut pattern piece number 15, which is our sleeve. You're going to need to cut an interface, number 18, which is our front facing. You're going to need to cut an interface, pattern piece number 19, which is our back facing. You're going to cut pattern piece number 17, our under collar. You're going to cut and interface number 16, which is our upper collar. You're going to cut pattern piece 13, which is our pockets. Pattern piece number 12, which is our side front. Pattern piece 11, which is our front. And pattern piece number 14, which is the back of our jacket. Once you have everything cut and interfaced, we can start sewing. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with pattern piece number 11, our front. Now you should have major markings as well as making a little dash into this corner dot. So on your pattern, you're going to notice that there's a little dot here. You're going to slash to the dot after you reinforce. So what I did is I stitched down to the dot and then across the dot, and then I stitched, making sure not to cut through my stitching. You're going to do that for both of your fronts. Now I want you to go ahead and grab your pockets. I serged the very top of my pocket, but you can turn under a 1/4 inch and then turn along the fold line. I am just going to fold along my fold line and leave my raw edge just serged. And then you're going to go ahead and press. Then I want you to top stitch across both fronts. Okay, now I want you to grab pattern piece 12, which is the side front. And on each right side, you're going to take your pocket and you're going to pin along the side and across the bottom. You're going to do this for both fronts. And now we're going to baste along each side and across the bottom on both of our side front pieces. Okay, so I went ahead and stitched down my pocket, down the sides, and then across the bottom on both side fronts. And now we're going to pin front to side front. So grab your front piece, and with right sides facing, go ahead and align notches. And we're going to pin. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now go ahead and pin your other front and side front the same way. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and again we're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now go ahead and serge or finish off your raw edge, and you're going to sew your other side front and front the same way. Okay, once you're done, go ahead and press your seam allowance towards the front, and then you're going to go ahead and grab your back piece and you're going to pin and stitch your center back. So with right sides facing, I'm going to go ahead and pin along the center back. Now I want you to go to your sewing machine, and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to stitch across the back. Okay, once you finish sewing the center back seam, go ahead and press it to one side, and then go ahead and grab your front pieces, and we're going to place them right sides facing. We're going to pin along the side and across the shoulder. Okay, now go ahead and go to your sewing machine. You're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch from the bottom down to the very top here, and then across the shoulder using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance for both. Then you're going to do your other side the same way. Okay, starting at the hem, you're going to back stitch. Now you're going to stitch across the shoulder. Go ahead and serge or finish your raw edges, and you're going to sew the other side and shoulder the same way. Okay, once we have our shoulder and our side sewn together, we're going to set this aside for just a minute, and we're going to go ahead and grab our upper and under collar. Okay, you're going to place with right sides facing your upper collar over your under collar, and you're going to go ahead and pin. Okay, we're going to stitch along the angled ends and across the bottom. Okay, I'm going to be sewing with the interface side facing up, and we're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and trim your seam allowances and turn your collar to the right side. Now go ahead and give your collar one good press. I just noticed an error in the instructions, and so I'm giving you a correction. Now I just told you to sew along both angled ends and across the bottom. That's actually incorrect. It's what it tells you in the instructions, but there's an error. You're actually only going to sew along this angle and across the bottom. This here and across the curve stays unstitched. As you can see, I went and unstitched mine. So that is a correction. Okay, so if you have already sewn across this angle here, go ahead and unpick your stitches. Okay, now that we've figured out that collar issue, we're going to go ahead and pin it to our jacket. So I'm going to first start with the center back notches, and I'm going to align my collar notches. And you should have marked a dot for your shoulder, so make sure that your shoulders match that dot. Okay, and the end of your collar is going to be at that dot that you should have marked there. And then you're going to go ahead and use that little slash that we did to open up and work around that corner. Okay, now you're going to start at the center back, and you're going to stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you're going to do the same thing, working back from the center down the other direction. Okay, I'm going to start at the center back stitch. I'm going to pivot when I get to my corner. And I'm going to do the same thing going in the other direction. press your collar, and then you're gonna go ahead and grab your facing pieces. We're gonna work with our front facing and also our back facing. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and pin the shoulder. Now go to your sewing machine and stitch across the top using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then I want you to finish off the raw edge around your facing. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and attach our facing to our jacket. So the first thing you want to do is align your shoulder seam. Okay, now we're going to start from the center back. We're going to stitch across and then down the side. Then we're going to start again from the center back and work our way in the other direction. Okay, so I'm going to start at the center back and work my way through one side. Then you're going to stitch across the bottom 1.5 inch, that's our hem allowance. Now go back to the center back and work your way around the other side the same way. Okay, go ahead and press your lining, turn out your corners, give everything a really good press. And now we're gonna do our sleeve. Now I did go ahead and press my hem. I'm going to go ahead and hand stitch my hem in place because I don't want stitching visible, even though this is more of a casual jacket. You can choose to either do it with the sewing machine and go ahead and turn up your 1.5 inch hem allowance and stitch, or you can do a blind stitch, whichever one you choose. So after you do that and we do our sleeve, the only thing left to do after that is for you to create your buttonhole and we'll be done. So we're almost there. Now go ahead and set your jacket aside for just a sec. Grab your sleeves. And you're going to, with right sides facing, fold them in half, and you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do that for both of your sleeves. Go ahead and pin. Now go ahead and head to your sewing machine and just stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pressed not just my underarm seam, but I also pressed up the hem allowance on the sleeve, and so you should have marked it. You have a fold line here that's going to create your cuff. I went ahead and pressed that. I'm going to sew it at the end, but I just wanted to show you that I did it. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab my jacket again, and I'm going to place my underarm seam with my side seam, and I'm going to pin. And then you're just going to pin around until you've got your entire sleeve pinned on to your arm's eye. And now go ahead and go to your sewing machine, and you're just going to stitch around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, we're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now go ahead and finish your raw edge and sew your other sleeve on the same way. Okay, so I'm going to now work on the hem of my sleeve. I'm going to show you how to fold over your cuff. So first do your fold over your along that fold line, give it a good press, and now we're going to stitch. And now I'm just gonna fold over to create my cuff. And I'm gonna tack it down. So I'm gonna put it back under. I'm gonna put it back under my machine and I'm gonna stitch. Just a couple of stitches to hold it. And now I'm gonna give my cuff a nice press. Okay, now once you're done making your buttonholes and deciding on whether you want a machine stitch or a hand stitch for your hem, give everything a final press, including your cuffs, and you are all done. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this sew along. Make sure and follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Mimi G Style, and make sure and visit the blog mimigstyle.com. Until next time, peace.